take it from page 11. Do you have page 11? It's in Ches. But yeah, Tes is on page 11.
Yeah, we have a lot of tests and then a bit of tests.
Okay, so we're going to take it from the top paragraph there. And this is what he says. 3 lines down. He just gives like a synopsis. Ze inyan klippus midyan. This is what klippus midyan ultimately is. Hamadon vari vasinas chinam meish rehu. It's the quarreling and the strife and the baseless hatred between one man and his fellow. Gam shelo asalo shum ra klal. Even though he's done nothing wrong to him. V'lo naga b'chol asher lo davar v'lo chetzi davar. He hasn't touched anything of yours, not anything, not even a half a thing. He's basically not done anything to you. V'gam hu enu choresh ra alav klal. He's not looking to do you any wrong. Rak shelo yachol l'sovlo v'hu sonei oso b'tachlis. The hatred is such that you just can't stand him, and you hate him entirely and completely. Ad shelo yachol daber imo. You can't even speak with the guy. V'lo lis'ariv imo b'shum davar. And you can't connect with him on any matter. Af b'davar shebekadusha. Even if it's a matter of holiness. V'asibu lazeh. What's the reason for this? This is crazy. He's done nothing wrong to you. You can't even stand him. You can't even do anything in Kedusha with him. The reason, hu rak mitzara yeshu shelo. It's only because of the original person's arrogance, right? That's ultimately we call it baseless hatred, but there is a cause for it, right? It's just that we call it baseless because the cause is not coming from the other guy. It's coming from you, right? Because of a person's own inflated sense of self-importance, his own arrogance, his own ego, his own yesh. He doesn't give any room. Eino nosen makom lazulas. He doesn't give room for the other person in his reality. Umenagid lo, and he opposes him. Av shelo asalo shum rava eino bo shum hisnagdus prati negdo. Even though he hasn't done anything wrong to you, and he has no particular grievance with you. Rak bezeshu nimtza ba'olam. Just the fact that he's found in the world. Shebezeh harihu mimayet yeshuso. In this, he automatically limits your own expression. In other words, there's the famous story that someone came to, I think it was the Frierdiker Rebbe, but I can't be 100% sure. And he said, he was complaining, like he was suffering a lot. He said, everyone's just like stepping all over me in the shul. Like I feel like, they're stepping all over me. So he said, if you don't put yourself out on the whole floor, everywhere, then they won't step on you. In other words, the reason that they're stepping on him was his own fault, right? He wanted to be in every single person's place. If you want to take up every job, and you want to take up every role, and you want to do everything, and everything has to be called by your name, and so forth and so on, so you're not going to be you feel like everyone's going to be stepping on you, and you're going to hate everybody. They didn't do anything. They're just trying to stand in their spot. As we find it, unfortunately, our great sin, bedoros hacharonim, in the later generations, b'chol makomos moshvos b'nei Yisrael, all places where Jews dwell. So it's not just here. I thought it was just here. Sheish chiluki deos b'chol davar. Everyone's arguing about everything. B'chol inyan minyanim haklalim, and every matter that has to do with the klal, in other words, the good of the city, the good of the people. And not just how to make the roads and which fountains to put in all the little corners of Sfat, but in all matters of Kedusha as well. Everybody's busy arguing. Everyone has a different day, a different opinion. Kamo binyani harabanim, who should be the rabbi? V'shochtim, who should be the shochet? Do I eat this hechsher? I don't eat that hechsher. Inyani besa knesses v'kadome. We're going to build, but I want to build. This guy wants to build. He's going to bring his money. You're going to bring. I actually saw with my witness with my own eyes when I first came to Sfat. This guy came in and he built and he put all this beautiful stone up in this shul, and he brought furniture and windows, and it was like a shell of a building, and someone came in and just put money down and just set the whole thing up. And the next day we see the whole thing being dismantled, and the windows are coming out, the stones are being pulled off the wall, and the guy comes in and he puts a whole other set of windows in and a whole other set of stone. I witnessed this with my own eyes. The truth is, the second guy's was a lot nicer. But the point is that it's you can't put the windows and the stones in the shul. It's my shul. I'm going to put the windows up. So they wound up wasting I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars because they were arguing about who gets the schus to put the windows in the shul. It was a sad day. Anyway, the point is that even on things of like building the temple, we're in the 3 weeks, we're talking about building the temple. It's also called Mikdash Ma'at. The little temple is the Beit Knesset. We can't even agree, right? Who builds the shul? And it's really it's because of a separation of hearts, right? The people just can't come together with each other. So everything the other guy does, it's my job. I'm going to do it, even though he's going to literally give me money. Adrabah. One guy says it, the other guy has to say the exact opposite. This one builds, this one destroys. So having a difference of opinion is okay. There's nothing wrong with Hillel saying one thing and Shammai saying another thing. The Chachamim, Rabbi Akiva, arguing is an old Jewish pastime, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what he's saying is people are masking their difference of opinion. They're masking their separation of their hearts as though it's merely difference of opinion. Right? In other words, it's not just that they're arguing and this one has a svara to here. He says, no, I think these stones are better. I think these stones are better. Let's talk. That's fine. You can discuss. You can have a discussion. But really, they're not just discussing their opinions. They're already hate each other. They're already basically, I can't stand you. You have no right to be in my building. I'm going to do the one doing the building over here. You don't even have a place here. And they mask that hatred as though it's a difference of opinion. Say, no, I don't really hate you. I just disagree with you. Right? Someone said that to me not long ago. Chaim, everybody. It's all masked evil. The fact that you say the opposite of your friend, it's not really because intellectually you come to that conclusion. That would be fine. On the contrary, that would be really productive because the other guy might add points that you didn't see. We already said before, dividing for the sake of unification is actually the greatest form of unification. But that's not what we have here, right? He's not saying, I want to put these stones and these windows because my intellect requires so, right? Because he figured out a better svara. He might mask it as that. He might convince himself and others that. But why does he really want it the other way? It's only because his friend wants it the other way. In other words, he's basing his opinion on whatever you think. I think the opposite. That is gross. And that's what happens a whole lot. If you pay attention to why you're actually arguing with people sometimes, you can convince yourself and others that you've got some kind of you're onto something, and sometimes you are. You really got like a shita which is all sound and full, and you know where you're going. But very oftentimes, you decide to have an opinion simply because the other guy takes another opinion, and he's just, I'm chesed of tohu, I'm gevur of tohu. Any other person's existence, let alone their opinions, is just getting in my way. My general rule is that I must say and want the opposite of what my fellow wants. And where does this come from? Right? This like need to just reject and to not stand the other person, and before he even lets anything out of his mouth, you know what? Before he even gives his opinion, I already disagree with him. Now he gives his opinion, I have something to I have some meat I can kick inside. No, that I particularly disagree with that. Truth is, whatever he was going to say, I was going to say the opposite. But now that he's actually said something, I can reduce his argument in specifics. And this is really not stemming from any intellect, it's coming from the heart, right? I've basically stated my position, and it's the truth, and anything else is going to be negated before me. It's because I can't stand the guy. It's because of a separation of hearts that we're opposing each other. What winds up happening? Money is lost, time is lost, neshamas are lost, you lose. The two rabbis are busy arguing with each other, and the thing that they were pretending to care about gets lost, right? That thing was actually important. That's why they were put in that position, to build the building, to make it happen, put the windows in, right? And that what winds up happening is that the actual beauty of what we're trying to build gets lost. When you have a tohu society, you can't build anything. But they don't see that. They don't see the fact that the job they're actually put in to do is sitting there vacant. They're just busy arguing with each other because it should be me doing it. It should be me doing it. Because the main thing is just their own self, their own sense of inflated importance. I told you it wasn't going to be fun to hear that, but it's what it is. Okay, moving on, chapter 9. Hine zehu gamkin asiba mashanitzmach sina bein ish re'ehu bli shum tam v'das. This is also the reason why we see hatred sprouting up between one person and his fellow without any reason behind it whatsoever. Rak shelo yechol lisboles re'ehu, you just can't handle your fellow. Umebit alav rak ba'ayin ra, and you only look at him with an evil eye. Ad shenimas v'nivze be'inav gam kol hatov shebo, and what winds up happening, you take it so far that you wind up like melting and negating and sort of disgracing in the person's eyes even all the good that he does. In other words, when you wind up taking on this perspective, so to speak, and the other person you want to reject, it could be that this other person is mamash a very, very righteous man, right? And we're saying it's usually this takes place between Rabbanim and Shochtim, people who have have a position to do something great in the world. They didn't get there by accident. And what happens is when these two people start fighting with each other, all the good deeds and Torah mitzvahs of the other person go completely out the window. In other words, even if you disagree with him, you don't like him, in theory, you should still recognize this guy's filled with Torah. This guy's helping people all over the world. He's raising money. He's doing amazing things, whatever it is. But when you start to have this evil eye on the person, you just reject him, fully, and you can't see anymore that he's actually got all this tremendous merits. Again, the guy never really did anything to you. He's not intending to do any evil to you. And as we've been saying, that your heart is just not whole with him, and it comes from no reason. It's just from your own self-importance. Right? This is what it's written. Amru achechem sonechem, right? It's actually coming up in a recent Haftorah that it says, they said that your brothers were your enemies. Shachechem hem sonechem. Dafka, your brothers, people are supposed to bind with and unite with, they become your enemies. Da'achu lashin chibur. The word ach actually comes from the word to join together. Hainu gam kashe'ein davar hamafri beinehem klal. Right. In other words, this is something that's it's just a natural thing that two brothers are supposed to be bound up together as one. That's why the person's called your brother. The word itself means to join together. You wind up getting into a stage of they hate each other without any reason. Right? He's kind of repeating himself over and over again, I guess driving the point home. Why do you hate him? You just can't handle him. His existence bothers you for no reason. And the So this is like the litmus test, the Even HaBochen. If you want to know, do I have sinas chinam? Is this talking about me? So you have to look at and see what it says here. It says the response. This will show up in that automatically you will not be rejoicing in his well-being and when things happen good for him. When you see the other guy is like things are kind of going his way, it disappoints you. Not only are you not happy, but you actually rejoice when things don't go well for him, right? When he has yisurim and painful things happen, you secretly are kind of happy about that, and at very least you're not pained over it, right? So if you've ever experienced that before, you've got sinas chinam, right? And the idea is that in truth, tzrichim litztar al yisuri zulaso. Yosem yisuri atzman rachman al. How should you feel? How do you know if here's the litmus test for a healthy person, right? A real Jew, a healthy person. This is what, if you're wondering what's going on in the minds and hearts of truly righteous people, he explains it here, that you are in reality supposed to feel more pain over others' downfall and others' yisurim, troubles, than you are over your own. right? So when something happens to you, how bad do you feel? When something happens to the other person, it's actually supposed to bother you, and you should be paying more than when it happens to you. That's like a healthy, bittled Jew. Asher be'emes tzrichim yeah. Ki al atzmo yecholim tzor cheshbon. How is that even possible? Is that true? Yes, it's logically you can reach this place no problem if you're actually in the avoda, because on yourself you can always make a calculation. Shemegim lo yisurim chas v'shalom. Because for yourself, you know your life, you know what you've done right and what you've done wrong. If you've been good today, right, and therefore you can find a calculation that mipnei masav halo tovim, that this thing that happened to you is really because of your own bad deed. V'kamayim razal, the sages said, im roim she'yisurim ba'im alav yifash feish b'masav. It's an open razal. Sages said clearly, if you see things that are happening to you that you don't want them to happen, start sorting through your deeds. And anyone who's have any like little hirhur of tshuva and actually tried this operation at home, you know that when you sort of like, you're like, okay, I got to take care of this. I'm going to do something. I'm going to make hachlatas. I'm going to get on a new train. I'm going to just spend like a week, mamish, doing what I know I need to be doing. Suddenly everything starts to turn around. You can like remove your own pains in your life through fixing your deeds. It happens like that. Hashem is watching. Because if you'll truly sift through your own shmutz, vada yimtza o yisla ba'avun bitul Torah. You'll certainly find a way to realize what you did wrong. And if you can't find anything, you can always hang it on Bittul Torah. Everybody knows that there's moments in the day, perhaps hours in the day, stretches of time that you just take off, right? And really you know, and your soul knows, and you feel guilty about it at some level in your soul, that that's the time you could have been connecting to Hashem through Torah learning. So if worse comes to worse and you can't find anything else, you never hurt anybody, you never said anything wrong to anybody, you'll find that you can put it on your own laziness in Bittul Torah. And therefore, since you have a reason why this is happening to you, and yet therefore you have like a way out and you can fix it, your own pains don't have to hurt that much because you can. It's justifiable, right? What's so painful and what's like breaks the heart is unjustifiable torment that comes upon a person. If it was justifiable, it still hurts, but at least it's not like insane, unexplainable pain. So for yourself, when things happen, you can always explain it. There's a reason that you did something wrong, that like, so to speak, you deserve it and you can fix it. Adarabba, you kablim ba'ava, and on the contrary, when you really get to the point that you realize you did something wrong, then those very pains, if you're, again, this is like a high level person, it's a real person, it's a person who's like succeeding in making things happen in life, you will then take those pains with love. It's called Yikabel Yisurim Bi'ava, because you'll be happy that this thing came upon you. Why? Because Hashem is the ultimate teacher, the ultimate father. He basically like put a little pressure point on you to make you feel uncomfortable, make you pay attention to what's going on, so that you would look through your deeds and then correct them. And now you're going to be rock solid, right? And so the pain that came upon you was a blessing from Hashem, and you can actually receive it. Chas v'shalom, we don't want this on ourselves or anybody else, but you could then receive it with love, because you know that like it was your caring and loving father like screaming at you to get back in line, and it worked, and now you're back in line. You wouldn't be where you are unless he chastised you in this way. It fixes your soul. Aval, that's for you. Aval alazula is very interesting here, how this works in reality. When it comes to the other person, you shall not make such calculations. You have a mitzvah to dan lachav schus, right? It's actually one of the mitzvahs of the Torah, right? That you must see your fellow in a positive eye. It's not, and it's very helpful to know that you actually have a mitzvah to do that, because oftentimes you're sitting there calculating, well, should I judge him favorably, should I judge him not? When you realize that you have to judge him favorably, right? You do. And the idea is when, God forbid, something negative happens to a friend or a person in your life, you can't make the calculations. Oh, well, he probably did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, and he probably has bittul Torah, and therefore this came to him as a positive thing, and he should receive it with love. You're not allowed to do that, because you have to say, my friend didn't do anything wrong. Like Hashem, like why are you like punishing this person for no reason? Because you have to think that the person's good. I'm dan l'chaschus. Even things that I might have perceived that I think he did wrong. Probably had a perfectly good reason for that. So I can't judge you because of what I know about myself. Because you're supposed to think, and you are thinking, certainly, well, if you're righteous, that he's certainly better than me. But I can't say just because I have bittul Torah that I'm going to put it on you. You probably don't. But you have to judge every man favorably. And therefore, what am I left with? This is exceedingly painful. It's punishment and distress that's coming to the world for no reason whatsoever when it happens to somebody else. And therefore, that has to pain me tremendously. And therefore, I have to beg mercy for the person. Like it's because when there's nothing to justify it with, it's like impossible to bear. And therefore, when I see someone else going through some hard times, it should pain me more than it pains when it happens to myself, and I should be begging mercy for this person. Right? And if you actually know for sure, in other words, this is not it's beyond judging favorably. You actually know for sure that he did something wrong, right? Then what is your response? You have to go and reveal it and give it over to him, privately. You don't want to reveal his sin publicly, but you're going to go, if you know that he actually did something wrong, you go and you take him aside, and you can rebuke him on his bad deeds. And through that, he'll return to Hashem, and Hashem will have mercy on him. And Hashem will remove his anger from him. So in other words, either he did nothing wrong and you have to beg mercy right away, or if you actually know he did something wrong, you can go, then your response is certainly not supposed to be happy about something bad happening to him. You can go, just like you did for yourself, and fix it with him, right? Tell him what he did, tell him if he's got to turn his ways around, and Hashem will have mercy on him. But when you're not pained over another person's distress, and you find yourself a little bit in your heart relieved, happy, you're like looking at the other person and quietly rejoicing, of course quietly, because you want to embarrass yourself by looking like such an evil person that you're happy about somebody else's downfall. So this is something that we keep inside, but when you're secretly happy about the fact that things are going bad for him and you're not pained more than yourself, this is coming from your hatred for this person. That's why I said this is like a symbol to know whether or not I'm walking around with the sinas chinam, because as we said before, the temple was destroyed, the second temple, for the sin of sinas chinam, and it's taken us 2,000 years to fix it, and we haven't fixed it yet. What's the problem? Because we don't think we have it. No one for sure in this room is going to walk around thinking that they just hate people for no reason. They can't even look at themselves like that. So I'm telling you, there's a test. When you find in your heart that something bad happens, God forbid, to someone you know, and you're not pained over it, and on the contrary, you're even slightly happy about it, that's the sign that you are filled with this midyan of arrogance, which is totally unplaced. But it's also a good thing, because now you can look at it and you can start to fix yourself.
Now, how does it work with,
Yeah, go ahead.
How does it work with accepting what Hashem is doing in the world? Because I don't quite understand. The Gemara says that if someone has Yishorim, so obviously the fashkash needs to do on himself and not others. But if I see someone else suffering, so automatically I say, well, maybe he did a sin, and it's accepted in the Sifra Rishonim. People get avonos, it's coming from sins.
It's coming from sins. That's what you have to take that cheshbon on yourself. You can't.
I'm saying generally, let's say.
Fine, but still, you have to dan lachav schus. You still have to. So no, it's not fine, because then you can't assume that the other person did a sin. You take that general klal that pains come from sin, and you can clearly apply that to yourself. That's what he's saying here. Clearly,
everyone, in fact, in reality,
because it's not because sometimes Hashem will make a test. Not every time that pain comes into the world, it's specifically because of sin.
So we have another option. It's called Yisurim Shel Ava, right?
Well, no, there's more than just that option, right? Yisurim Shel Ava is okay. Hashem is doing it because the person's exceedingly righteous and he's giving him. That's like high level stuff. But sometimes it's literally like it says in Chovos Levavos, right? Like you can see that a person is been giving this test just to test you, right? So when you see another person in the world going through suffering, and it's there to see how are you going to respond to this thing, right? Like I think what he's talking about over there is when you see, let's say, on the opposite, that good things are happening to bad people, right? You could come to the conclusion, there's no judge in this world, right? And he says Hashem could create this whole thing around you just to give you that question to ask and to give you a proper test, so you come to the right conclusion, right? So too here you can say it's judging you whether or not you're going to dan l'chav zchus. Something happens to your friend, and you know you're supposed to dan l'chav zchus, and all of a sudden he's going through something. Are you going to turn quickly and say, he must have done something wrong, because that's the klal? Maybe not. So Hashem definitely leaves he's clearly saying here that, what does it mean, dan l'chav zchus? Every time something happens to somebody, you could easily pull out, well, you must have done something wrong. And that's why the Torah comes and tells us, no, but tzedek, in righteousness, you have to judge your fellow. So I'm saying, the point is on yourself.
There's like the Rishonim that don't explain it in this kind of way. This is very extended, I don't know, I feel like fuzzy.
How do you know that those Rishonim are not talking about yourself and how to employ this on yourself?
No, they didn't take it this way. See, it's like you go to any place and everyone are like tzaddikim. That's what happens. Like you're like, well, do we have any Rishonim out here?
But are you supposed to be the one to determine that? Clearly not.
Of course, yes, because I'm part of society.
No, you're being part of society is not to give you the right to judge people unfavorably. If you clearly have seen, that's what he says. If you know clearly that you saw or he told you that he did evil, then you have a new mitzvah. If you can handle it and do it properly, or if you're sitting on a beis din and you have to mamish look into the case and make a judgment. So then you're not, even then, there's kind of a mitzvah to dan l'chav zchus in a fuzzy area, but you have to judge. But you're sitting on the road, walking down the road, living your life, and you say, this world is filled with Rishonim, and I have to judge them? Yes, you have to judge them favorably. That's what I'm told you. It's a mitzvah. So this chazal that says, when there's a sin, when there's piranhas in the world, it comes from sin. The question that we're asking and that we're debating right now is, how does that go together with another chazal, which is that you have to dan l'chav zchus, right? Because your outlook on the world is fixed by Hashem. Just like you look at the world and you can come up with a faulty conclusion that there's many powers and they're not all united with each other. The sun does its thing and the moon does its thing. It's idol worship. You could see that if you want to. There's a way of convincing yourself that that's the case. The Torah comes and says, don't think like that. You're not allowed to think like that. You could think like that, and I'm telling you no. Think that it's all united and one and there's a creator. So too, when it comes to see another person's actions,
suffering.
Suffering, excuse me.
Which explanation do we have except
all that is talking about yourself.
No, it's talking about reality. It's rules in Hashem's world.
Exactly. How does it go again? How does it go together? What you're talking about is two statements of Chazal which seem to contradict each other.
No.
Yes.
We're talking about massing. Even that I find it hard.
No, because you're saying if a person has suffering, then you are obligated to not judge him favorably.
You're not judging your force, because that's part of how Hashem's reality world is. When you saw him coming upon a person, Hashem is not miyasa for no reason. It's exactly what the friends of Eve tell him. They were just smashing it in his face, that's all. But that's a fact. It's not.
But hold on a second. When you bring out Eiyuv, you literally just proved my point. That did come for no reason. He did not deserve those things.
And Hashem says,
no, so why did it happen? So he was literally what I just said before. There was Yisurim coming onto a person to test these friends to see how they would react. Were they going to go and tell Eiyuv, hey, you did something wrong, man, you got to do tshuva, which is exactly what they shouldn't have done. And they were like a symbol throughout all eternity of how to not respond to someone who's in pain. And it's because exactly what we just described. Hashem could create a whole situation just to test the friends of Eiyov so they wouldn't do that. And that's what the Rebbe is saying here. Don't do it.
People smashing at him, but at the end Hashem said to him, you don't go to the depths of earth. You do not know what happened to the highest places in the sky. So then if we have rules, right, that's Hashem's answer. You do not know, you don't know the depths. You need to be misbattled to the ends of understanding and knowledge and whatever, how things go through the whole system from beginning, from A to
okay.
No, it's important because when we accept Isurim that they come from Ahav or from love or it's from sins, it's not because I'm judging you, it's because it's a fact in reality. The only reason I could come and tell you this is maybe Surim Shal Avo, Surim Shal Sins, is because this is how Hashem runs the world.
For you, that's how you're supposed to
No, for
internalize that
everyone,
teaching.
it's for you also.
Not,
it's a fact.
but just like you said, you don't know the depths. You don't know the judgment. The sin that
not
you're,
judgment,
the sin that
it's a
you're,
fact.
that the person could be going through. I'll give you an example, right? There's something called emes and emes lamito, right? So if you want to go and get into a situation where, let's say, a person stole from someone and he now has to pay him back, and the reality is he didn't steal from him. It's just there's witnesses that say he did, and there's a whole like situation that he was, let's say, set up. So he has to pull out money from his pocket and pay for something that he wasn't guilty in, right? So that's a din Torah, and and the Torah is a din emes. In other words, he paid, and it was not like a faulty thing, because when it came through the system of reality that the Torah sets up, he's chayiv. And once the Torah determines that he's chayiv, no matter what is going on in the actual reality, right? The Torah determines reality, and this person has to pay. But that's like unjust, one could say. And the Torah is not unjust, so how does it work? Because that's emes, but there's something called emes la'amito. There's a deeper truth, like you're saying, you didn't pull him to the depths, you didn't go to the heavens, that let's say in a previous Gilgul, this guy was obligated to this guy, and he never paid him back, and so it comes out in this lifetime that he's paying. Fine, in a previous Gilgul, that's this guy. So I'm looking at my friend here, and in his whole life, from the time he was born till now, he literally didn't do anything wrong, and he's being unjustly having to go through Piranios.
No,
and you're going to say, that's my point, is that just every time you see an evil person in the world, you must judge favorably, because you don't know emes
You're
la'amito.
judging against Hashem. Hashem gives two reasons. He's sorry because you did sin.
Again, and then you have to
No,
put
but
that
Hashem.
statement against the other
No,
statement of
that's
Dan
what
L'chav Zchus.
No, that's what
You are having a conflict with two parts of Torah that seem to go against each other. They can't, right? They can't both be true. And I'm telling you, open up your mind a little bit here. How could they both be true? How can we put these two seemingly totally conflicting statements and make them both make sense at the same time? And the answer is the one that has to do with recognizing that all Yisurim is from sin or from love, is speaking to you how you should understand your life. That when something bad happens to me, I have to look and say, I must have done something wrong. But he's explaining why you cannot do that very thing to another person, because you have a mitzvah to Dan L'chav Zchus, and they don't go together. So you now want to nullify the need to Dan L'chav Zchus, because this pillar of recognizing that.
No, it's because
But I'm saying you don't have to nullify either.
In other ways, and therefore this explanation logically doesn't fit for me to get.
Except if you
Because it's
use this
unique.
little unique
No,
piece which brings them together.
Because it's not like dawn. I'm not.
First of all, even
This
according
guy
to
I'm looking at
your
doesn't exist.
understanding, so say that it's piranhas that are coming from love. Then you don't have to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine, so leave it at
No,
that.
but that's not connected to Ladun. These are like facts in the world. You can't be like.
You don't know the facts in the world. You don't know what this guy did. That's the point.
No, Hashem, again, we have Yisurim Shel Avo, Yisurim Shel Avoinus, right? So it's this Adam, I don't even see him as an Adam yet. This is like, it's like the physics of why he's suffering come. So he needs to go into one of these categories as a fact.
Even though it could
what I
also
mean?
be a test from Eov, like we learned, or it could be something from a different Gilgul.
But Hashem
So
doesn't
there's
suffer
more
for no
aspects. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is that there's more aspects than this person's personal liability. If it was something that he did in another life, it's like you're paying for your grandparents' sins. It could happen, but you still have to. This guy's pashut innocent in this lifetime. So Hashem's like mysterious in this way, right?
It's not because it's last
So you
year,
can
but
still
sometimes-
say that there's a basic rule of reward and punishment in the world. It doesn't go against the fact that I can still judge this guy favorably, because there's other scenarios that are at play which enable that this guy could be innocent and still justice is being done.
What, saying that in the last Gilgul he did a sin and now he's paying for it, is you're calling this guy a tzaddik?
Yes.
No, Hashem is giving him an opportunity to fix. It's not
Yeah,
true.
yeah, but who's
What does it mean in
fixing?
this generation?
Because in this person's mind, in this person's life, he was born and died. He never did anything wrong. He's literally paying for something that somebody else did wrong, with a different consciousness, a different understanding that he's suffering from. It was him. But it was him as a different person. So yes, there's a general judgment that's got to be cleaned up. It's got to be taken care of. But if you're going to take that to a beis din, and you're going to say, is this guy righteous or guilty or innocent? They're going to say innocent, because they go with the reality which can be seen. You're talking about deep, mysterious things, which is what you're saying about Eov. And those things, don't play in the same way. Yes, that's a grand design of justice. It doesn't stop me from judging this person favorably. And therefore, even though something has happened to him, and I must say on some grand design of justice, there must have been some evil there, but he still didn't do anything wrong, and he still should be judged favorably. So how does it go then? Every time there's negativity, I'm supposed to, a person has pains, I'm supposed to say that it was from sin. And how do I link that up with that you're supposed to judge a person favorably? They're both true. So what the Rebbe here is explaining to you how you and I, simple people, like fuse these realities together. Is that on a global scale, which is like not having to do with my personal need to judge. Yes, there's either for pains come either from love or from some sins. But for me, when I see a person, when I look out the world, that's not my calculation. That's God's grand calculation. I have to judge you favorably. I have to judge you favorably. I must. I have a mitzvah to judge you favorably, right? Things are happening to you that are not good. That does not give me a license to suddenly judge you unfavorably, but what it does do is give me a license to judge myself unfavorably, because I know myself and I know that I sinned. So therefore I can say it's because of my sin that these things are happening, because I actually know that to be true of myself. I don't know it to be true of you. Unless he puts in parentheses here, I literally do know it to be true of you, in which case it's slightly different. I'll go and tell you did something wrong. Yeah, Lev, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, where in Hobos, I have the translation in English, where does it talk about this?
I have to find it for you, but it's in it's Shara B'Tachon.
Oh, it's in Shara.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And are there other sources that talk about it in English?
He's bringing here a few sources, but I
have the last page.
oh yeah, you don't have the last page. Okay, we got to make some more copies. But no, this is from something else. This is the Indian of Yisurim. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the whole conversation of Yisurim Mi'ava and Yisurim from Avonos is that conversation is taking place in the Gemara of Brachas, but we'll look into it.
It seems to me that for us in the grand scale, when we're davening in the Amidah, and we're davening for justice, that there should be complete justice in this world. So therefore, once I've done that frees me from this obligation of doing more than that. I've davened that there should be complete justice in Mishpat. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. The point being, the point here is just what? On a practical level. I think it was a helpful discussion.
I don't know, I still don't vibe with it for some reason. Like the reason of tsar, I'm mitzvah for another person, but that's from a different reason. It's not connected to the Ladun Lekavsos. When I'm in Russia, I'm mitzvah on myself, and nevertheless, when I see someone who's a Russia, I'm mitzvah for him. Like
What's
I was
that?
praying, the mitzvah idea and the Ladun is like two separate things. You could be mitzvah for a person who's a Russia. It doesn't need. You
It's
don't
not
need to
about-
turn him
it's-
into a tzaddik to be sorry for him.
No, because the
suffering.
idea is that
when I was
if
in Russia, I was sad and I was sorry for
you could be
myself.
sorry for a person for sure that the nefesh is like suffering inside of this place, but the point is that what we're talking about right now is how much amplified the suffering is when it's suffering for no reason. That you can diminish the suffering tremendously because when there's a reason, you can remove the reason and therefore you can remove the suffering. That's the point he's making here. That's the whole point that he's making here. Because
get closer to forgiveness, that's something else.
Hold on a second. Because when there's a reason, which for example the reason would be inside of ourselves, which is sin, we know that if you remove the sin, you remove the suffering. Look through the whole Tanakh. It's literally the story of that, right? You have the sin. Hold on a second.
He's like tzaddik. He's tzaddik.
That's the point that he's trying to make. That's why your suffering for another person is so great. Because you don't have any reason for it, because you have judged him favorably. And therefore, it really pains you. That's why the mitzvah is dafka going on the other person more than on yourself, because there's no reason for his sin. That's exactly what he's trying to say. And if there is a reason for his sin, like he says in that parentheses, then you don't have as much pain, because you can go over to him privately and say, hey, do you know something? If you'll take away your sin, you'll get out of this pain. Because, and that's what minimizes the extent of the suffering. What he's trying to say is, when bad things happen to ourselves, God forbid, it's painful, but we can fix it right away. We can look into our deeds. We can take it away. When it happens to another person, you should be more pained than when it happens to yourself, because you can't fix it and you can't take it away because he didn't do anything wrong. So it's irrational suffering. And of course, you're going to beg mercy for him, right? If you know that he did something wrong, mamish, then there's some reason behind it, and you can go and try and get him out of that bad way of life, right? If you know for sure. But in general, you can't just assume that of any person unless you see it with your own eyes. And even then, you got to like chakira and drisha.
In the end, we look at it as Yisurim Shalava, like someone who's going through this crazy suffering. Like
Either Yisur from Ava, or like we gave about now 3 different examples of how it could be that the person's suffering without him having sin. Yisurim from Ava, which is like high level. There's like the whole idea of emes la'amito, that he could be suffering from some like grand calculation of a different lifetime.
That's Yisurim for sins. Just in a few levels.
Okay, but again, it's not, let's say, for example, an understandable his sin. And one is, it could be literally just a test that like Eov didn't sin, right? He didn't have a previous life of sin in a previous Gilgul. He was just like, there was like some kind of like a concoction being made, like in Hashem's depths of reality. What would happen if we made it like terrible things happen to this person for no reason? What would the rest of the world say? How would that? And let's make a book in Tanakh about it, because it's such like a thing that could happen, right? So it could be just a testing the rest of the world, and it's mamash for no reason whatsoever. The depths of Hashem's reason, but not because of love or sins. It's just who knows what Hashem is thinking on that one, right? He does things that we just simply can't understand, and that could be the scenario. It could be an Eov situation. So we have 3 different possibilities now, which are all like pretty reasonable, why something bad could be happening to another person for no sin, no fault of their own, right? So it doesn't break the klal that bad things are happening because of a person's sin, because you can put that on yourself, right? You should apply it to yourself. And for everybody else, dan l'chav zchus. And there's ways to justify that with these 3 other answers that we gave. There's probably a few more answers we didn't think of. We're just off the top of our heads. Okay, moving right along. Whew. What?
You're saying Dan on Dan Skut? What do you say?
Dan.
Like din.
Yeah, it comes from the word din.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, yeah. Okay, going back, or going forward. We never go back. We just finished chapter 9. Let's just take a little dip into chapter 10 before we conclude. We have a few more minutes left. Oh, guys, I hate to tell you, but it's all about us. We find this sin of baseless hatred in our great sin of the last generations primarily in mitzvah and Torah people. Shomrei Torah mitzvah people are the central culprits for this disease. Shekol echad v'echad bone bama la'atzmo be'esek haTorah al pi daito v'sichlo dafka. And where do we see this? And it's very natural, right? Because each one is busy digging in and learning and like discovering, and they're building, when he says they build a bama for themselves, a bama is a platform or a altar for idol worship, right? So instead of like basically joining the Beis HaMikdash where there's one altar for everybody, where like we elevate ourselves to like the central mission of collaboration. Each one's going to go build their own, which is usher, right? They're going to build their own little altar and try and make their own elevations and make their own sort of connection to Hashem, which according to the Torah law is usher. If you want to make a connection to Hashem, you must do it through the communal channels. But each one's learning Torah, he's figuring out the way, he's understanding how things work, the Seder HeChaltzu, Rabbi Akiva, and he winds up building a private altar for himself with his own learning of Torah according to his understanding and his seichel dafka. V'kamo came be'esek avoda al pi chachmasu dafka. Ve'enu misachin mischabrim al ze im ze klal. And also his avoda. In other words, not just his Torah learning, but like sort of the davening and the midos reflection and all that takes place, which is a result of his Torah learning. Also, he does that according to his own understanding. He's figured out the pathway, and he's going to stand strong on his principles. And therefore, another guy comes with like a different suggestion or even a different view and a different way of doing things. He doesn't say like, that's interesting, let's see what I can take from you. He says, that's wrong. You're offer on my private altar, or he's going to puzzle everybody else's. Asher be'emes yisod v'ikr gadol ba'oskim b'torah v'avoda sheyischabru v'yidabru zem zem. Whereas in truth, the real foundation of Torah learning must be built on the idea that those who are occupied in Torah and avoda must join together, must fuse together and speak with each other about the matter. Hen be'esekat Torah, right? Both when it comes to Torah, as it says, "Halo barzel bebarzel yachad ve'ish ve'ish yachad pnei re'eyo," like two swords that sharpen each other. That's what we call like a chavrusa. Is that you're basically, we go into a chavrusa, you could see two guys screaming at each other, right? It looks like we were just screaming at each other. If a normal person would come into the room and say, guys, do you hate each other? You're screaming your opinion, I'm screaming my opinion, but at the end we're like, oh, good, let's move on. Because we're sharpening each other, right? You brought to the table, there's a blaring contradiction between two divrei chazal. And we're trying to undo and we're trying to figure how it comes together. So this is, if you talk about it, so what happens is each one gets sharper. Each one moves forward. So in other words, this is how Torah should be learned, by conversation, by debate, by even heavy duty debate and conversation, because we could come with totally opposing opinions, and ultimately that's a positive thing. We would ultimately each get stronger and our swords would get sharper if we fought it out. But when each one stays in their own place and just says I know the truth, I understand things the way, then neither of us gets sharper. And this is not healthy Torah learning. One cannot say that according to the way he understands is the truth, period, leave me alone, I don't want to talk about it. When he hears his fellow and they start going back and forth about it, because that's the only way you can come to the truth, is when you actually argue about something, right? That's why we had a whole kind of a fiery debate also on Shabbos, if you recall, with some friends there. And it's like, and in the end, it's like, why? It says when you see another guy's kid acting out, right? You don't do anything about it because you're like, it's not my problem, it's not my kid. But when it's your kid, you put him in shape, right? You must have a word with him. You get into it with him. We've been saying before that the position of shali, v'shalach, shalach, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. But it says in the Pirkei Avos, some people say this is midos beini. It's just like, okay, you want to be like a regular guy, just let bygones be bygones. But then it says, no, zos midos sdom. This is actually the midah of sdom. This is the most cruel, harsh, terrible way to live your life. To just let the other guy be and just be like, you just go ahead and thinking what you want to think and I'll think what I want to think. That's like destroying the world. Even though it looks difficult to engage with a person, because there's sparks that fly out when you start sharpening swords. And it gets heated, and a lot of people who are afraid of conflict get scared about such a thing, right? They say, what are you guys like stirring the pot for? Things were so much more peaceful when you were just quiet and didn't talk to each other. Now you start a conversation and the whole place is in a battle. That could be a very, very healthy battle. Because engaging, look, you think the Chachamim, when they sat and figured out mamash the Gemara, just sat there and let everybody think what they were thinking. There was vibrant and heavy-duty, intense debates going on, to the point that even sometimes they had to apologize because they insulted each other in the middle of these debates, right? You see it all the time in the Gemara, right? They fasted because he mamash said a bad word out of his mouth to his fellow. But why? Because they were mamish at it. You gotta be because sometimes division is the way of making ultimate peace. Right? You can't just leave it alone. That's midas dome. Okay, we'll get back to it tomorrow. Shkoyach.